What's the inspiration behind that?
When I saw it in the field, it was like, I've got to do something with that, and I wanted to do a military tribute. And when you look at it, I don't know if you guys had a chance to look at the tailgate on it.
Stacey David did not disappear because television forgot him. He disappeared because television changed around him. For years, he was the guy millions of gearheads trusted. Wild hair, calm voice, real tools, real builds, and no fake garage drama. Then, at the height of trucks, he walked away without a farewell, without a scandal, and without begging the industry to take him back. The shocking part is not that Stacey vanished. The shocking part is that he may have been the only one smart enough to leave before the machine ruined what made him special. The builder before the cameras. Before Stacey David ever became a familiar face on automotive television, he was already the kind of person who could not leave machines alone. Growing up in Boise, Idaho, he was not just fascinated by cars, bikes, and engines. He wanted to know what made them work, what made them fail, and what could be improved if someone had enough patience to take things apart. That curiosity is important because Stacey's whole television identity came from something real. He was never a host pretending to be a builder. He was a builder who happened to become a host. As a teenager, Stacey worked on go-karts, motorcycles, old engines, and whatever mechanical projects he could get his hands on. That early obsession taught him the most important lesson in fabrication. Nothing feels impossible once you understand how it is put together. A machine is intimidating only until the first bolt comes loose. After that, it becomes a puzzle. Stacey learned to weld, fabricate, troubleshoot, improvise, and think through problems the way a real shop builder has to. But cars were not his only creative outlet. Stacey also had a serious music side. He moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and worked as a professional guitarist, playing sessions and touring with different acts. That part of his story matters because it explains why his builds always felt different. He did not treat them like mechanical checklists. He treated them like songs. Every car had a rhythm, a tone, a personality, and a story. To Stacey, steel, rubber, paint, and horsepower could say something. That combination, mechanic, fabricator, musician, storyteller, is what made him perfect for television when the right opportunity arrived. When trucks changed automotive TV in 1999, Trucks, launched on what was then TNN, later connected with Spike TV's automotive programming world, the show arrived at the perfect time. Automotive television was still finding its identity. Viewers wanted more than polished commercials and racing highlights. They wanted someone to show them how the work was actually done. They wanted real builds, real tools, real mistakes, and a host who did not talk down to them. Stacey David became that host. With his wild hair, easy confidence, and genuine technical knowledge, he made Trucks feel like a garage class for the entire country. He could explain suspension, welding, bodywork, engine swaps, exhaust choices, and fabrication without making viewers feel stupid. That was his gift. He made complicated work feel reachable. You did not watch Stacey and think, only a professional can do this. You watched him and thought, maybe I could try. That was the real power of Trucks. It did not just entertain people, it activated them. Backyard builders, young mechanics, high school shop students, dads working with sons, people with half-finished projects under tarps, they all saw Stacey as someone who gave permission to start. In a TV world that often made cars feel expensive and untouchable, Stacey made them feel personal again. The builds helped too. Copperhead, the 1967 Chevy C10, became one of the most famous project trucks in automotive TV. Crazy Horse, the custom 1966 Ford Bronco, became another fan favorite. These were not just props for episodes, they were characters. Viewers followed their progress, learned from each stage, and remembered them long after the episodes aired. Why Stacey felt different. The reason Stacey connected with people was simple. He respected the audience. He did not act like viewers were passive consumers waiting to be dazzled. He treated them like future builders. That is a huge difference. Many TV personalities perform expertise. Stacey taught it. He would slow down, explain the reasoning, and show the process instead of jumping straight to the finished result. That is why his absence later felt so personal. Fans were not only losing a host, they were losing a teacher. Stacey had become the guy who made the garage less intimidating. He brought confidence into homes where people had tools, but not always the courage to use them. He made the build feel possible. This is also why his style aged better than many shows from the same era. Automotive entertainment eventually became louder, faster, and more obsessed with drama. Shops shouted at each other, deadlines were exaggerated, arguments became storylines. Builds became less about learning and more about conflict. But Stacey's best work never needed that. He understood that a good build already has conflict built into it. Rust, time, money, parts that do not fit, tools that break, mistakes that need fixing, and the satisfaction of solving one problem at a time. That is real drama. Not staged yelling, not fake deadlines. The drama is whether the thing you imagined can actually become real. The quiet exit from trucks. Then, at the height of trucks, Stacey was gone. That is the moment that created the mystery. Viewers tuned in expecting the same energy, the same host, the same garage spirit, and suddenly, the show felt different. There was no huge farewell episode, no dramatic goodbye speech, no long explanation. 1 week, Stacey was the face of the show, and then the next era had begun without him. That silence made people wonder if something bad had happened. Was he fired? Did he burn out? Did he get pushed out? Did he quit television entirely? The truth appears to be less scandalous, but more revealing. Stacey walked away because the direction of the show no longer matched what he believed automotive TV should be. According to the story fans have repeated for years, the pressure behind the scenes had been building. More sponsors, more product placement, more polished segments, more network influence, faster builds, less depth, less time spent showing people how to actually do the work. For someone like Stacey, that was not a small creative disagreement. It hit the center of what made the show valuable. He had helped build trucks into something people trusted. If that trust was going to be traded for polish and promotion, then the show was no longer the same thing. So he made the decision most TV hosts would never make. He left a hit show while it was still powerful. The real shocking part. The shocking part is not that Stacey left. The shocking part is that he left without turning it into a spectacle. In today's media world, a departure like that would become content by itself. There would be podcasts, accusations, reaction videos, reunion drama, and behind-the-scenes clips. Stacey did not do that. He simply stepped away. That says a lot about him. He was never chasing fame the way television wanted him to. He wanted to build. He wanted to teach. He wanted control over the work. If the platform stopped serving that mission, then the platform was not worth protecting. That is a rare mindset in entertainment, because most people who reach national TV do everything they can to stay there. Stacey seemed more willing to lose visibility than lose integrity. This is the original twist of the improved version. Stacey did not vanish because his career failed. He vanished from mainstream TV because he refused to let TV turn him into something fake. He chose a smaller road that gave him more ownership. In an industry built around exposure, that looks like disappearing. In reality, it was self-preservation. The comeback that was not really a comeback. After leaving trucks, Stacey did not disappear into retirement. He built something new. In 2007, he launched Stacey David's Gear Z. At first glance, it looked like a comeback show, but it was more than that. It was a correction. Gear Z was Stacey taking back the parts of automotive television he believed were being lost. Deeper education, real builds, less manufactured drama, and creative control. This time, Stacey was not just the host. He became the producer, director, and owner through his company, Rattletrap. That changes the whole story. On Trucks, Stacey was the face of a show that could eventually move in directions he did not control. On Gear Z, the show moved through him. The builds, the pacing, the explanations, the tone, and the mission all reflected his values. That is why Gear Z felt familiar to fans, but not identical to Trucks. It had the same heart, but more freedom. Stacey could build cars, trucks, hot rods, kit cars, movie-inspired machines, family projects, and educational segments without being trapped inside one format. He could chase the story of a vehicle instead of only the sponsor-friendly part of a vehicle. He could slow down when something needed explanation. He could make the garage feel like a classroom again. Why bigger offers did not matter. Once Gear Z proved there was still an audience for Stacey's style, bigger opportunities came. Larger platforms, more money, more exposure, and the chance to turn the show into something more commercial. For many people, that would have been the dream. For Stacey, it was the old trap returning in a new wrapper. He had already seen what happens when a show becomes too dependent on outside demands. More money usually comes with more control from other people. More exposure often means more pressure to simplify, exaggerate, and perform. More network involvement can mean less time teaching and more time creating moments that look good in promos. Stacey had already chosen against that once. He was not going to walk back into it just because the check was bigger. That choice explains why some fans thought he vanished. He did not disappear from the work. He disappeared from the loudest version of fame. He was still building, still filming, still teaching, and still creating Gear Z. But he was no longer chasing the mainstream TV machine that turns every personality into a brand mascot. For Stacey, the smaller platform was not a downgrade. It was freedom. The garage as a classroom. The best way to understand Stacey David is to understand that he saw the garage as a classroom. Not a stage, not a drama set, not a place for fake fights. A classroom. Every project had to teach something. Maybe it taught welding. Maybe it taught suspension geometry. Maybe it taught paint prep, budgeting, safety, wiring, or how to think through a build before spending money. But there was always a lesson under the entertainment. That is why parents, teachers, and young builders responded to him. Stacey was not just showing off what he could do. He was trying to transfer confidence. The message under almost every episode was simple. You can learn this. You can make mistakes and fix them. You can start with something rough and make it better. You do not need $1 million shop to care about craftsmanship. That message matters even more now because hands-on skills are disappearing from many people's lives. A generation raised around screens can easily become disconnected from tools, engines, fabrication, and mechanical problem-solving. Stacey stood against that trend. He made the physical world feel exciting again. He reminded viewers that building something with your hands creates a kind of pride no app can replace. The builds that became legends. Stacey's builds became memorable because they had personality. Copperhead was not just a 1967 Chevy C10 with power and polish. It was a statement about what a classic truck could become when treated with hot rod imagination. Crazy Horse was not just a Bronco. It was a blend of classic off-road identity and custom craftsmanship that helped inspire a generation of Bronco fans before the modern Bronco revival made them trendy again. Then came projects like Sergeant Rock, Heavy Metal, the V8 Interceptor, Banshee, Rat Roaster, and countless others that carried their own identities. These names mattered because Stacey understood storytelling. A build with a name becomes easier to remember. It becomes more than a parts list. It becomes a character with a purpose. Some builds honored history. Some celebrated veterans. Some leaned into movie culture. Some proved that performance did not always require the most expensive path. Some showed viewers how to rescue forgotten iron and give it a second life. The common thread was intention. Stacey did not build just to fill airtime. He built because each vehicle gave him a chance to teach a different part of the craft. The industry got louder while Stacey got quieter. While Stacey continued doing things his way, the automotive media world changed around him. Cable television became less dominant. Streaming grew. YouTube exploded. Social media rewarded short clips, extreme thumbnails, fast edits, and instant reactions. Automotive creators had to compete not only with other car shows, but with every form of entertainment on every screen. In that environment, Stacey's style looked almost old-fashioned. He was not built for fake outrage or disposable clips. He did not need every episode to pretend the shop was about to collapse. He was not chasing viral humiliation, celebrity cameos, or staged disasters. He remained focused on craft, which can look quiet in a media world addicted to noise. But that quietness became part of his strength. The people who stayed with him did not stay because he shouted the loudest. They stayed because they trusted him. In a world where everyone is selling something, trust is rare. Stacey built trust by being consistent. He taught, built, explained, and refused to betray the audience's intelligence. That kind of loyalty does not always trend, but it lasts. The current reality. The updated truth is that Stacey David has not vanished in the literal sense. GearZ is still active, and his official platform continues to promote episodes, bonus content, restoration material, and his broader automotive world. His company, Rattletrap, remains tied to the production of the show and has helped create more than 200 episodes. That means the real story is not whatever happened to Stacey David. It is, why did Stacey David stop playing by the old rules of automotive television? That question is more interesting because it reveals a bigger shift. Stacey moved from being a TV personality inside someone else's structure to being an independent builder and teacher inside his own. The mainstream spotlight may not hit him the same way it did during the peak of trucks, but the work did not disappear. It became more focused, more controlled, and more aligned with what he wanted from the beginning. The man did not leave the garage. He left the circus around it. The real reason he vanished from TV. So what is the real reason Stacey David vanished from TV? He did not vanish because he failed. He did not vanish because people stopped caring. He did not vanish because he had nothing left to build. He vanished from the loudest version of television because he wanted to protect the one thing that made him valuable in the first place. Authenticity. On trucks, he became famous by teaching real people how real builds happened. When the show's direction allegedly began shifting toward more sponsor pressure and less creative freedom, he walked away. On GearZ, he built a new format where he could own the process. When bigger opportunities threatened to turn that into another machine, he stayed independent. When the media world got louder, he stayed focused. That is not a disappearance. That is discipline. Stacey understood something many TV personalities never learn. If the audience trusts you because you are real, you cannot trade that trust for short-term attention and expect it to survive. Once the garage feels fake, the whole thing collapses. Stacey protected the garage. That is why fans still respect him. The original twist. The original twist is this. Stacey David did not leave television because he hated it. He left the parts of television that got between the viewer and the craft. He still understood the power of cameras. He still used television and video to teach, but he refused to let the camera become more important than the build. That is what separates him from so many automotive personalities. Some people use cars to become famous. Stacey used fame to get people back into cars. That difference explains his entire career. Fame was a tool, not the destination. The destination was always the garage. the project, the lesson, and the person watching at home who finally felt brave enough to pick up a wrench. Once you understand that, his whole career makes sense. Trucks was the breakthrough, leaving trucks was the protection. Gear Z was the rebuild. The lower profile was not defeat. It was the cost of doing it right. Why his legacy still matters. Stacey David's legacy is not only in the vehicles he built, it is in the builders he created. Somewhere, there are people who learned to change oil because of him. People who tried welding because he made it less intimidating. People who bought a project truck because Copperhead made them believe an old C10 could become art. People who saw Crazy Horse and realized a Bronco was more than transportation. People who watched a rusty vehicle come back to life and understood that patience could turn decay into pride. That is a different kind of influence from ratings. Ratings measure attention. Legacy measures action. Stacey's viewers did not just watch. Many of them went to the garage afterward. They bought tools. They made mistakes. They fixed them. They built memories with their families. They taught their kids. They kept old vehicles alive that might otherwise have rotted away. That is why his story feels different from a normal TV disappearance. He did not need to dominate every screen forever. He needed to leave behind enough knowledge for other people to keep building. So, what do you think? Did Stacey David make the right choice by leaving the mainstream TV machine behind? Or should he have stayed on a bigger platform and fought from the inside? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more stories about the real reasons automotive legends disappeared from the spotlight, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you do not miss what comes next.